One, we are live. Hello and welcome to PropTechBuzz, a business podcast channel on global PropTech where we talk to founders and CEOs from over the world and learn from them how they build and manage world-class PropTech startups. So today I have with me Annu. Annu Talreja is the founder of Accacia.ai, and she's the second time founder after having exited Oxford Caps. She's an INSEAD pass out and a Business World 40 under 40 winner. And I'm pretty thrilled to have her with me today. Before I introduce her, I'm just wanted to announce all my subscribers, all my listeners and viewers here that we have hit the magic number of 1,000 subs, which after a lot of hard work for the past 4 months we have achieved. You all know PropTech is still a niche, and achieving this number is, at least for us, is a significant milestone. So please keep coming over because we have some interesting and exciting lineup of speakers in the days to come. And talking about exciting speaker, so we have Annu. Annu, welcome to PropTechBuzz. How are you doing today?
Hi, Ravi. Really excited to be here and congratulations on that milestone. That's fantastic in such a short period of time.
Thank you, Anu. Anu, I have a bunch of things to ask you, especially about Acacia. But there is a context of where you have achieved today with Acacia. There is a lot that you have done in the past. So, what would be a good context setter is to learn from you about your career trajectory and your
Mhm.
path to entrepreneurship before we jump into the meatier stuff of Acacia.
Sure. So my career trajectory has been a bit of, as an outsider may call it, a little all over the place, but I've made some weird moves. So by training, I'm an architect. Studied architecture as my first degree, then did a master's in city planning. After that, I actually worked for about 10 years. I worked with a company called AECOM. AECOM is NYC listed world's largest engineering design firm. I was based out of their Singapore office. Then I spent a couple of years with Ernst& Young, their M&A practice or transaction advisory practice, focused on real estate and infrastructure sectors. So studied architecture and urban planning, but kind of used it more in the financial M&A sort of domain eventually. And while I learned a lot of that on job, I thought it's a good time to take a break and sort of get some classroom training around the principles of finance. So went to INSEAD for my MBA. And then after INSEAD, I moved to the principal side, worked with Marriott, the hotel group. And with them, I was managing their EMEA investments and asset management. So Marriott has two listed entities, Marriott Hotels, which primarily works on an asset light management contract sort of model. There's another entity called MVW, which at the corporate level works like a fund and developer. So we would deploy $300 million annually on an average in the region, buying out assets. I had a fantastic job, all fancy locations, Bali, Phuket, Gold Coast, Japan. We were buying hotels, building hotels, had to travel to all these locations for work. So, lovely job. But I guess after doing that a couple of years, I kind of it was time for me to sort of do something different. I'm a Sindhi by background. If you know the Sindhi Indian community, we are known to be business people. So I guess that kind of had to come. So I quit my corporate career, took the entrepreneurial plunge. That's why Oxford Caps happened, and then now Acacia.
Are is so Sindhi as a community, our business people I know, are women also becoming a strong facet to that community? Are they becoming more and more entrepreneurs?
Now they are. Now they are. Probably not my generation as much, but now they are for
Excellent.
sure.
Cool. I'm always interested whenever somebody is venturing into entrepreneurship for the first time on how they hit upon the first idea. It's always so confusing because there are opportunities everywhere. What is that one thing that you want to pick and invest a good chunk of your life? So how did Oxford Caps happen?
So I've done it twice, and the process of that happening the first time is very different from how it happens the second time. So I'll give you a flavor of both. The first time it was mostly Priyanka and myself. I think you know Priyanka, my co-founder from Oxford Caps.
Yeah.
We've been friends for over 20 years now. We went to same architecture school, very similar career trajectory. Priyanka and I, we basically met over Christmas of 2016, and we were both kind of bored of our day jobs, wanted to do a lot more. We were both growing at a very fast pace in our career, and both in real estate. So we started talking, and one thing led to another, and we just kind of ended up in student housing. So it was more spontaneous, and I would say, kind of just a peripheral understanding of what's happening in the market, as opposed to a very thoughtful, derivative sort of process. In the second go, I think you're way smarter, because you know what kind of road bumps, roadblocks you'll kind of face growing a company. So it's you're smarter, but that's not necessarily always the best thing. It slows you down in kind of taking a final call on what you want to do. But having said that, in the second, at the time when I was ideating Acacia, yeah, it was definitely more derivative. I had the idea, and then I invested some time into researching how you could build a scalable business around it. Invested a lot of time in that, but it was definitely more thoughtful and derivative the second time around.
So when you said more smarter, could you specify that bit? Like I'm sure there is a bit of naivety when you start first,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and many times that is a strength. Okay,
yeah.
because you think you can achieve everything, and you do not have the curse of knowledge. So could you explain why you think the second time? So what does it take to build something for the second time as a second company?
Yeah, so see, the first time when you're doing it, you're coming just out of your corporate job. And typically, when you are in any corporate, you are a functional expert, right? Specifically, we were working in a specific industry. I was doing investments, asset management. Priyanka was doing transactions. So we were functional experts. We kind of knew a lot about real estate as an industry, but we had never built something ground up, right? So you don't know exactly what a 0 to 1 versus 1 to 100 and then 100 to 1,000 journey kind of looks like,
Right.
right? Once you have done it, like in our case, we had kind of built a company from 0 to almost 200 employees and 0 to $20 million in revenue.
Wow.
So you had almost done like a 0 to 10, and then a 10 to 100 in terms of life of company, right? So you know what kind of roadblocks would be there, what things you need to think about, what would be this good things about this business model versus what would be the challenges. So your mind kind of works a little differently. You are now thinking about that space as a business and not just as an opportunity to capture, right?
Right.
Secondly, when we started out first time, we were also very new to raising venture capital, because we were traditionally coming from industries that were more private equity, family office sort of backed industries, right? So we understood the PE investing model, but VC is a very different domain. So now you also know if you have to build a business that is to be built through VC capital versus something that you need to bootstrap, like what are these different business models, what works in one area versus what doesn't. So there's a lot that you know that you didn't know before. So you are definitely smart about it. But I would say from a technical perspective, sustainability, carbon emissions, decarbonization perspective, there was still, a lot that was unknown. So I think second time around, it was best of both worlds for me, because there's some things that you know, some that you don't know. So yeah.
So was your priority the size of the problem second time? The What was the priority for you when you decided to pick on Acacia as an industry, as a problem that you wanted to solve?
I think couple of things. Number one, definitely, I wanted to build in a space which was really forward looking.
Hmm.
So while it may not uh, kind of be the pressing need for each and every industry player today,
Right.
but you're getting there, right?
Mm.
So when you're building businesses, you either build something where you're first to market,
Right.
or the market is already established and you are the second and third one,
Right.
second or third one, right? So definitely wanted to be more in the first category as
Got it.
opposed to being in the second one. But there are challenges, the pros and cons of both.
Right.
But personally, I would have preferred to be in the first category. So, and because I wanted to do something in real estate, sustainability kind of seemed that area which was really, really forward looking, and especially decarbonization. A lot has been spoken about sustainability in general. And secondly, I think how scalable can the business can be, right? So, what is that model that can really help you scale up uh, for you to get to like a 300, 400, $500 million revenue mark in next 5 to 7 years is basically the crux of building it.
Nice. So usually when I speak to entrepreneurs, their business ideas are at least in three dimensions. One is either they are ahead of time, or they are way too late because other
Yeah,
it's a late idea, and then there is a sweet spot which is right on time, right?
yeah.
So do you think the space that Acacia is today operating, is it in that sweet spot, or it would
Yeah,
be
the thing with climate as such is that what you said is absolutely correct for a lot of industries, but the thing with climate is there's so much urgency in governments and at least top of the ladder kind of capital providers and industry leaders that the evolution from being early to being too late would be a very, very short period of time, right?
Mm,
So while when we started last year, so for example, my first fundraise, kind of took like 6 months,
mm,
right? But once that was done, because last year was the time when a lot of vertical SaaS decarbonization platforms were coming up,
right,
right? So last year may have been a little too early, but
right,
had I started like even 10 months later, if I'd started now, I would definitely be way too late,
got it.
right? So the difference between that, getting to that sweet spot is practically, kind of a matter of weeks or months when it comes to climate, because things are really, really moving very fast.
Thank you. So now let's understand what Acacia is into,
Yeah.
and also I would like you to unpack what does this entire ecosystem look like, because there's so many players. If you can actually lay out the landscape and what are the different kinds of players, that would be great to begin with.
Sure. So Accacia is a real estate decarbonization platform. So I'll just take a step back and give a little bit of context of why we are doing what we are doing. So basically, if you see, sustainability in real estate is a subject which has been there forever, right? I've seen the space evolve for almost last 2 decades, but up until I would say last 3 to 4 years, it's been more of a reporting sort of function within any real estate company, right? There've been two parts to it. One, ESG reporting, and second is building a green building at the time of construction, right? Now, when you talk of ESG, ESG is a very, very broad domain, right? There is S and G, which are kind of very qualitative parameters. In terms of E, you've been looking at basic primary data reporting, so energy consumption, water consumption, etc., and you've been kind of tracking trends around it. So as a domain, ESG has not been very quantifiable. It's not like I say I have a 30% EBITDA company versus Ravi, you have a 40% EBITDA company, and hence your business is better, right? It's been largely very qualitative, which is where it has also not been a core business conversation for the most part.
Right.
Um, right. On the other hand, there's been green building certifications and stuff, but the green building certifications have also kind of peripherally lurked around reducing some basic consumption and mostly focused on energy. Right. And they've been talking about reducing energy consumption and perhaps kind of supplementing a little bit of renewable on it. That's been the whole kind of conversation in real estate sustainability for decades.
Got it. For
But
decades, is it? For
for
decades.
decades.
Okay.
for decades. And the space has kind of evolved, right? You started getting like some certifications, like a lead certification and
Yeah.
stuff. But that's been the general contours of the conversation.
Got it.
But in past 3 to 4 years, with this increased focus around the whole climate crisis issue, um, people, governments, and industry leaders have recognize that the E part of ESG, we need to double click and kind of focus on the climate impact that our business is kind of having,
Right.
right? And real estate and that whole value chain kind of is one industry which is perhaps one of the single largest contributors for carbon emissions, because buildings kind of become your locus for consuming most energy and anything else that kind of contributes to climate, right? So that's where, if you see in last 3 to 4 years, there's been a lot of progress from a regulatory environment perspective.
Right.
And typically when there's a regulatory push, it kind of tends to fast track things, just like what demonetization probably did to Paytm, right,
Yeah.
in a way. And that regulatory push is at different stages in different countries. So some countries like US, they are local state level laws. The SEC law is kind of currently in progress. There are other countries where there's a law for climate disclosures. There are yet others where the law is also complemented with a corresponding carbon tax or a remediation fee, and stuff, right? But everybody is kind of moving in the same direction.
Right.
And that's the point. I think that's a threshold where I felt that, this is the right time to actually, one, you have something which is measurable, and
Mhm.
hence you can productize it. And when you can productize it, you can scale it up, right? Before that, most ESG and green billing was more of a consulting model. It cannot really be productized.
Right.
Second, because there's a regulatory push, there is a demand, sort of push. There's a pumped up demand in the market as well. And hence, both factors put together, it's the right time to kind of build a scalable business that can be widely adopted. Right, so that was the context behind Accacia, and we started building out a real estate decarbonization platform.
Mhm.
Um, in terms of the market landscape, there are, I would say, three or four different types of players. So there are horizontal SaaS kind of carbon accounting players. Watershed, Persephone, these are kind of the biggest ones in US. If you look at the US North American market, the most capitalized kind of companies, one of the first to start, but they have a very PLG sort of product where they're trying to cater across industries, and hence, at least for some industries where there is a complex supply chain, and you're looking at enterprise grade reporting and tracking,
Mhm.
uh, these don't necessarily work the best. There is another kind of set of tools which is more around real estate ESG reporting platforms, but they are built totally different. Carbon accounting, or GHG emission measurement, what we call, is a complex algorithm, and is way more, as a tool, it's way more complex than what you would typically do in an ESG reporting. And then subsequently, there's an actionable part to it as well, which is AI, which is decarbonization. So we basically set out to fill that gap, and we took a platform approach to say that, okay, we'll do your carbon emission measurement for real estate companies at
Mhm.
asset and the entity level, asset portfolio and entity level. And then we will have an AI enabled engine which kind of helps you set your net zero goals. And it also recommends projects for you to get to those goals, and everything that goes with with those projects, including capital planning and resource planning around it, right? So that's basically what we are doing with Akasha.
Got it. So just to summarize, so the kind of players that are there in this space are of two kinds. One is plain reporting, which has been there for a decade or more, and now there are players like you who are going beyond reporting to actually offering actionable insights, right? So where you recommend what are the actions that you need to take to achieve your net zero goals.
The
So
reporting tools have also been more around ESG reporting broadly. We
uh-huh,
don't do ESG reporting. We basically don't do anything of SNG, but we double click on the E part and do carbon emission measurement and decarbonization as a recommendation tool. So we have hyper focused on decarbonization as an area within real estate.
got it. So what would be an example of a recommendation? Like first of all, what kind of clients is are you looking for? Who's your target audience, target customers?
So
And then
our
what would be a recommendation look like?
So our target customers are basically real estate owners, developers, asset
Hmm,
managers, and operators.
got it.
So we are working with, for example, Hines, which is a very large real estate owner, asset manager. They have about $100 billion of AUM globally. I think they're the fourth or fifth largest in terms of AUM. So we are basically working with clients like that,
Mhm.
hotel groups, data center
Right.
owners and operators. So different asset classes within real estate.
Mhm.
Uh, we are now also kind of expanding towards the infrastructure side. So we're
Mhm.
talking to airport operators and airport managers and stuff as well,
Got it.
stations. So anything that kind of comes with the built environment
Got
as
it.
such.
So when a client like airports or Heinz, what would be? I mean, I'm just looking as an outsider who does not understand climate. What would be a recommendation be from your end in terms of tangible recommendation from your end for them to act upon?
Yes, so recommendations, see, decarbonization is a multi-decade exercise, right? So most players you'll see they'll have a net zero goal of 2050 or something.
Got it.
So the recommendations are also kind of structured from a short, mid-term, long-term kind of perspective, and in their their structure as to how complex they are to implement. So
Got it.
it goes from simply as simple as buying carbon offsets or RECs, which are renewable energy certificates, or
Oh,
investing in carbon removal projects where we have marketplace integrations and a host of certified projects that they can invest in, to actual long-term retrofit solutions of new type of building materials and everything that comes in between, right? So in between could be you switch part of your electricity to renewable, do some on-site generation, buy some off-site, change different machinery and equipment, installation of heat pumps, for example. So different IoT devices for optimization. So anything that comes between as quick as buying offsets to actually doing retrofitting in your building, anything that comes in between is basically, kind of will figure as a retrofit, as a decarbonization solution.
got it. So customers like you, they have they usually publicly announce their net zero goals. Okay, so now they have to stick to those commitments. So do they sign up with partners like you to achieve these goals? Is that how it works? Like they look for,
So,
okay, who?
so there is a central body globally, SBTI, Science Based Target Initiative.
Mhm.
So customers typically across industries, they sign a net zero pledge with SBTI, and when they sign that pledge, they also have to give them a decarbonization pathway, and then report their progress on an annual basis with
Got
that.
it.
So we basically work with SBTI, within the SBTI framework.
Got it. And then they're looking for partners like you to help them achieve these goals, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
then you offer multi-pronged approach. Like you could tell them about okay, how, so you work with them end-to-end processes, and you say where they could
Yeah,
optimize and
yeah,
become more
yeah,
green, right?
yeah.
Is that how it is? Okay.
Yeah, so
uh,
not only our engine tells them how they can optimize with that project, we
mhm.
also have like two to three for each project. We have vendor tie-ups,
I see.
right? So we'll kind of suggest vendors that can help them execute those as well.
Excellent, cool. And now let's, because I was talking to Priyanka and she said I do not understand anything about climate, and you and that's why she was she was not very confident to venture into anything that is challenging to learn. But it tells a lot about you, because you did not take that as a hindrance for you.
So
You saw that as an opportunity.
to her benefit, I think both of us individually are we are very different people.
Mm,
She's an excellent operator,
mm,
right? So she would be a fantastic fit to something which is more operationally intensive.
got it.
That's really not my cup of tea. I am kind of more technically sound, and I like to play around with concepts.
Mm,
So that's one. Secondly, her experience in real estate has been highly transaction focused. Whereas
mm,
if you look at my background, I've kind of moved from engineering companies to investments, asset management, which is a lot of operations as well. So I've kind of done a little bit of everything within real estate.
got it.
That also kind of enables me to sort of work in this multifunctional sort of area,
Got it.
because this is not just engineering solutions, right?
Got it.
There's a lot of financial structuring, understanding of businesses, how real
Mm,
estate business models kind of work
right.
in different asset classes, understanding of key stakeholders, and
Got
then engineering and financial solutions as well, right? So,
got it. Mm.
what I've done is a bit of everything, and that's how my experience kind of is probably a little better suited for this.
Got it. So, what are the climate change bodies where these startups? I'm sure there are communities where you are also learning from, right? So, are there any formal governing bodies, international bodies where these startups engage with and learn with each other and stuff like that, and
Uh,
push
I
envelope in terms of innovation?
Yes, so I wouldn't say there are a lot of organized government bodies when it comes to startups,
Hmm.
but they are organized bodies when it comes to climate change in general.
Right.
So when it comes to the frameworks, there's GHG protocol and SBTI that I talked to you
Right.
previously about, and PCAF, which is more on the financial side. So they are these bodies which are kind of setting up, because the industry is in a very nascent stage, right? So a lot of standards and frameworks are evolving.
Right.
In addition to that, there are some industry specific bodies. So GRESP, we are a GRESP partner. We are the only product company from Asia to be the GRESP partner, data partner. GRESP is the largest sustainability reporting platform when it comes to real estate and infrastructure.
Got it.
So they are industry specific bodies as well. In
Mhm.
India, I think Prashant, who's on our board from Axel, Prashant and a couple of others from the VC community, they under the ACT framework, they have kind of had a couple of startups make a climate pledge during the COP27 event that happened in Egypt last year.
Mhm.
Um, there are these initiatives that are kind of happening at micro level, and then there are broader initiatives which are kind of more global and setting up frameworks.
Got it. And you're also going to New York for CRE Tech event also, right? And you
Yes,
mentioned it last
we are participating in CRE Tech. CRE Tech, we're really excited about it.
time. Mhm.
CRE Tech is perhaps the best and the largest real estate technology event
Right.
that happens globally. We didn't last year. We were probably a little too early in our product journey that time,
Mm.
but this time we are kind of going there. We are participating in different formats,
Right.
even on their Climate Week, which Climate Day, which is the last day of the event.
Right.
So we're really excited and looking forward to that event.
So when you go to events such as CRE Tech, what are the potential outcomes from that? Like, is this a platform where you make your presence felt, or there are more tangible outcomes like actually making some partnership, getting some customers? What happens in a platform like this?
So CRE Tech is I would say that ways it's a very fantastic platform that will give us, kind of multiple dimensions of what we can expect. So certainly, as a founder, I'm always in sales mode. So we are hoping we can make some good sales and get some good potential client introductions. We're also launching our product in North American market this summer. So it'll be a very opportune time for us to participate there. Um, in addition to that, there's so much happening in the industry, particularly when it comes to the decarbonization of our part of our platform.
Mhm.
work very closely with a lot of startups as well as matured companies, but we are always more excited about all the innovation that's coming out of the startups. So really excited to see what's new. Is there's a
Hmm.
lot that is happening in terms of building technology, building materials, etc., etc. So really excited at looking at some of these new things that are there. And then, of course, getting your name out there and brand building is certainly always on the agenda.
Michael, CEO of CRE Tech, he will be my next guest.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah,
Great guy.
yes, so CRE Tech, and they have two, right? So they are the CRE Climate as well. So
Yes.
so is this a merged event, or they are two different events?
Yes, so it's 2 days of CRE Tech and the third day is the climate
Climate.
day. So
Got
we are doing all three.
Got it. So you mentioned about your platform not being ready last year, and today it's ready. What stage of the platform is today, and what is your future vision? What does the roadmap look like in the next year or so?
Yes, so we pretty much are out in the market. Our clients are using the platform. So we are deployed to over 20 million square feet of commercial assets across asset classes, actually. So now the platform is really up and running. We also have good feedback coming from clients on a regular basis. So we're pretty much ready. But of course, as with any SaaS product, we would continue kind of adding, enhancing our platform from both feature perspective as well as experience perspective. So that is an ongoing exercise that will keep happening. But we are out in the market and clients are using it, and we've been getting really good feedback about it.
Got it. So benefit of other founders who are building a SaaS product, and they're quite new in the platform. How do you what is the kind of conversation that you have with your early customers? Because in all likelihood, you are still not mature. Okay, there are some prominent players already. So what is your value proposition to your initial customers, that they go ahead and take a bet and sign up for your product into
Hmm.
their processes? Like how does those conversation look like,
Hmm.
especially
So
in a is as strategic space like yours?
Hmm. Yeah. See, you're right. Product always has a maturity journey.
Right.
Facebook got to where they are after decades. So,
Right.
so your early customers, it actually varies from what SaaS you're building, right?
Hmm.
So it goes back to our first point. Are you the second or third in the market? Or you are, kind of one of the early movers in the market, right?
Right.
So in our case, while they are players who are peripherally doing components of what we're doing,
Hmm.
we are amongst one of the first to kind of put everything together
Hmm.
and put a lot of other missing pieces together and have a platform approach to it,
Got it.
right? So that conversation is very different from, let's say, if I was developing a finance accounting tool and going and replacing SAP, for example, right? So
Right.
there are two very, very different conversations. So in our case, the conversation, and then again, it depends on the kind of SaaS that you have. Is it like when Salesforce perhaps started first selling? Are you kind of doing that process offline? Is there a process that offline that is kind of laid out,
Right.
and your platform kind of plugs in and moves that, digitizes and automates that process? Are you that SaaS?
Right.
Or in our case, as I said, a lot of things are fast track, right?
Right.
Most of our clients are actually doing, or rather, a lot of our clients are actually conducting a carbon emission measurement exercise for the first time, at least in Asia,
Right.
right? And some who have been doing it at a very broad level,
Hmm.
and they are getting down to a granular level, and then the aspects of decarbonization and SBTI goals for the first time with us. At
Hmm.
least 50% of our clients are like that,
Right.
right? So with them, the conversation is very different, as opposed to somebody who's been doing the process in an offline manner and wants to now automate it.
Right.
That's two very different conversations. In first one, they are kind of doing the exercise for the first time. So the conversation is more around whether you are the technically sound platform.
Right.
Automation is kind of a cherry on the top.
Right.
In the second conversation, it's all around automation and how you can help them be
Right.
more productive and reduce man hours, get in more transparency, etc., etc. Right? So not all SaaS is equal. Again, depends on what you're building and what the product is really.
Right. And with respect to pricing, and this is a very generic question for early founders. When your product is an MVP and you got some customers who are invested in you because it solves a crucial problem for them, over time your feature gets richer. So are you allowed to increase your prices substantially in the due course of time? Is that how it is, or because when you're early on, you want that customer to sign up for an X
Yeah,
price, but
yeah.
you know that now your product is far beyond what it was early on. So are you allowed to make those changes?
Yeah, so again, that's a it's one of those tricky things. Pricing, takes a couple of years to sort of nail.
Hmm.
Even before you start thinking of the increment of pricing when you become more feature rich
Right.
or mature, I think fundamentally, what is that pricing? What is
Hmm.
that price point, right?
Right.
So price discovery, and then price escalation and
Hmm.
stuff. Again, I would say there's no one size fits
Hmm.
all.
Hmm.
We are also in kind of that discovery phase still,
Hmm.
um, right? But it really depends on the market that you are in, what
Hmm.
kind of competitive landscape you have, and how much your MVP is going to actually make their lives easy,
Right.
right? Is it something that is going to be a revenue generator for them, or is it going to
Hmm.
save cost, or is it just kind of helping them digitize with digital adoption and stuff? So really depends on a lot of factors. There's
Yeah,
no
but for you, what is the value that your platform would offer? Is it towards optimizing towards that net zero goals, or towards actually helping them get green in terms of revenues? Like, what? How do you optimize? How do you measure the success of your client?
So I would say we would, to begin with, kind of fall initially in more of the cost optimization
Got it.
bracket, because one, we are saving on manpower cost. We are bringing in more or as opposed to internal manpower. If you were going to consultants, then of course we, as a tool, with things automated, we are way more economical.
Right.
But as we kind of move along, and as the industry also matures, your decarbonization goals and your decarbonization progress can actually be a very strong driver to be able to attract, for real estate guys to be able to attract like the best tenants, and hence get like a revenue push, to be able to attract cheaper form of capital.
Hmm.
So a lot of it will kind of fall in place as a revenue or a top line enhancer as the industry matures. Today, we fall more in the cost optimization kind of bracket as
Got
such.
it. Thank you. Let's talk about fundraise. So, is this right to say that climate tech startups are the hottest sector today? Like, I mean, you get it easy. You just have to say that you're working on climate tech, and then investors are rushing.
I wish it was that easy. So uh, I am that way is a very grounded founder. I don't believe in these market kind of trends. We started building it when climate wasn't hot, uh,
Hmm.
right? So, and we were there were a lot of potential investors who um, took the liberty to define different directions to our business, but we kind of stayed true to what we believed in and what we initially set out to do. And
Could
today
could you,
we
could you double down on that one, because this is interesting. So there are investors who would prepare roadmap for you, is it?
Uh, so it's not so much of a roadmap, but everybody has an opinion, right?
Hmm.
So if see, because any early stage investing is always an art, I think, right?
Hmm.
So it's more about what shapes your worldview.
Hmm.
So a lot of potential investors may not kind of have a deep understanding of real estate industry, for example, right? Where we were building, but I have seen that industry from all different facets. I just have a very unique perspective on the industry to know that yeah, the industry is big enough, and then this will work. Whereas some of them may come from a purely business or financial perspective as well.
Right.
So of course, everybody has a different worldview of where the world is going and which business can scale versus not.
No,
So
but do they understand this? But like, are these investors from climate tech industry? Like, do they understand this industry, or these are neutral to the industry,
a mix,
or a mix? Okay.
a mix, right?
Mm,
But then again, see, climate is a very very broad domain, right? So
mm,
somebody who is doing EV. Um,
got it. Yeah,
to somebody who's making green cement or a cement alternative,
got it.
to
Yeah,
somebody who's doing a SaaS platform, to somebody who's doing like carbon removal technology,
or carbon
somebody
trading. Yeah. Mm.
carbon trading, somebody who's doing like ocean, carbon.
Meaning, yeah.
It's all
Mm,
broadly in that climate bucket, and it's virtually impossible for one investor to kind of understand the technical aspects of everything, right?
got it.
So,
Got it. Yeah.
climate or no climate,
Got it.
right? And all of them are like really PhD subjects in and of themselves, right?
Mm,
So,
mm,
it's also not fair to have that expectation that somebody would kind of understand all different baskets.
right.
I think eventually that's why early stage investing is mostly bet on the founder and kind of thesis, and founder market fit kind of plays a big role.
Right.
Yeah. So I was saying you were talking about how easy it is to get
Mm,
investment in climate. So I don't think um, it's it's ever, at least in my experience, I have not seen that people are just waiting to kind of throw checks.
mm,
Right, it may happen with some star founders, like Adam or somebody else. Definitely hasn't happened with me. But there is definitely a lot of interest, right, as opposed to what was there a year ago. There's
mm,
certainly a lot of interest.
mm,
I would say there's also a lot of maturity in, compared to a year, 12, 24 months ago. There's a lot of maturity in terms of their own understanding and thesis of what works in this space or what would work.
mm.
So yeah, there's terrific interest, and there's good quality capital available today. So it's not just kind of climate focused or impact funds. Now you see mainstream capital like Axel and BCAP who have backed us. You actually see mainstream sort of venture capital kind of backing hardcore climate technology ideas. So that's really good news.
What could you explain? What does good quality funding mean?
So what I meant good quality was that your top of the funnel, kind of the best venture VCs
Got it.
are now kind of looking at VCs or private equities, sovereign funds. They're all kind of looking at climate as a space, right? It's an area of interest, and they're looking wide, right? So Temasek, for example, has started climate focused early stage venture fund, right?
Right.
So similarly, there's a lot of um, good LPs kind of investing in climate focused funds. There are a lot of good VCs who have raised climate focused funds. So now even VCs have started understanding, or the investor community in general has started understanding that this is, yes, an area of focus.
Mm,
It is going to be technologically intensive,
right.
and it is going to have a different sort of risk return, sort of metrics.
Mm,
Uh, so you actually see that mainstream capital kind of coming in there,
got it.
and not just capital. I think a decent level of understanding as well.
Got it. So, for you, how did you prepare yourself for the investor? Because I assume they would. The first question would be, okay, how are you relevant to this industry? Of course, you are a 2x founder, but your last company had got nothing to do with climate. Like, what are those hurdles that you had to cross, and what did you do to prepare yourself to make yourself attractive to some of these investors? Like, what?
Uh, I think basically just sort of having a very solid understanding of what you're going to do.
Hmm,
Uh, number one, a very precise understanding, right? And then how that differentiates exactly is different from XYZ that's there in the market. Or
Correct.
even if you're not differentiated enough, then is your GTM, sort of different, right? In our case,
Mm,
the product was differentiated, but if you aren't, then is your GTM kind of differentiated,
mm,
or you have some unique insight that other people don't.
mm,
And then I would say, if you're a SaaS product, then having some early pilots kind of really validates. In our
mm.
case, we had three enterprise, really good kind of enterprise pilot clients who almost helped us co-build the product. So
Yeah,
that kind of gives you a lot of validity.
got it.
That validates your assumption a lot.
Mm,
And then, of course, it's a team. So just having the right team with different pieces of the puzzle, kind of fit in,
got it.
to say that you'll be able to execute, is what matters. So eventually, it's basically being crystal clear about your vision and being able to kind of transcribe that in a way that somebody who's not from that space understands.
Correct.
And having enough connection with your vision is what matters, I think, in such early stages.
So did you raise it at the idea stage, or were you already building the product before you raised your first round?
We were building we were so actually, because our fundraise was almost a 6 months process.
Mm,
We kept the round open. We got a couple of angels and smaller checks, institutional checks, early on, and then we got in B capital, and then subsequently Axel in the same round. uh, so we actually, when we started, we went from being a pre-product to actually a product with almost a product with pilot clients, sort of thing. By the time we closed the round, so we went through that journey while we
got
were
it.
raising, and that'll be, I think, typical for anybody, because typically a round does take anywhere from 3 to 6 months to kind of close.
Got it.
Even if you get a term sheet very early on, it's a 2 to 3 months process to close, all said and done.
Got it. And I've seen recently, lately, most of the VCs have mandatory proportion of their funds allotted to women founders or minority founders, or maybe to a certain sectoral. Like they also have pressures to ensure that a part of their portfolio goes to green tech technologies and stuff like that. So did you have this to your advantage? Like, does being a woman and entrepreneur have an advantage today to raise funds?
um, See, the moment you're classified in a minority category, there's no way that can be advantageous, uh,
But
especially when it's.
there is minority funds today, which where everybody have to, especially the big VCs, have to adhere to that. They have to ensure that the portfolio is actually supporting the minority, including women.
So you can have a founding team with a male CEO, a male COO, and probably one female in the mix, right? So you can
Yeah.
have a mixed founding team. In our case, when we started out, we were three of us, and I'm the CEO, and I'm the majority shareholder. So that's very different from having like a mixed founding team with equally split kind of equity, right? So,
Mhm.
so you if you have to just meet quotas, like with everything else, there are a lot of opportunities, right? So, I don't think that's necessarily to your advantage as such. But having said that, I also don't think that's the right lens to look at it. I mean, if I'm getting capital because I have a quota, then that's not going to go too long. I would
Yeah.
actually not want that capital. I would want that somebody believes in that idea and will back me. Because one of the major things that you need look with your capital providers is how long can they back me, right? This
Mm,
is a space which is kind of going to evolve. They
mm,
can get me in. I can get foot in the door once to help them meet their quotas. Not, I hope I haven't. But when it comes to the point of participating in future rounds or continuing to back with the company, we see an investor company relationship is, a very, very long relationship, and you have to kind of look at it from that perspective. It cannot be a one-off event as
Mhm.
such.
Yeah, but I would like to unpack this a bit more, because I'm not a woman myself, but I would like to know from your perspective, what is the ground truth today? Is it a fair play today? Is it purely democratic on the merit of the idea where funding is done, or are there still inherent biases against women founders getting a foot into the door just with the power of the idea?
Um, so I would say that they there are certainly some biases in some part of the community,
Mhm.
but those biases are also a result of what's happening in the world. There are very, very few women founders or women led companies that are there, right? So you basically don't have a lot of role models. So for somebody to kind of fit you in that position where you have to go through a lot of up and down and kind of stick with it and build the company and take it public in a 10 years sort of time frame,
Mhm.
you need to be able to see those role models, and then you start fitting others into some mold. That's how typically human psychology would work, right?
Right.
So as there are more of us kind of coming in, definitely that biases are kind of going lower.
Mhm.
But I think what's important is not whether there's that bias or not. There are a lot of other biases which are much stronger. There are biases against, for example, if you're not from IIT or you don't come from a pedigree college, you're from a tier two, tier three city, right?
Mhm.
You're very young or you're very old. So there are tons of biases that exist, right? I think what's important is basically when you're going to an investor, the key is mm, being really self-aware. Whether it's during fundraising or building a company or running a company, knowing what you think your strengths are, what you think your weaknesses are, and what the world perceives your strengths and weaknesses are,
Right.
and then how do you address them, right? Having a game plan around it, right? So if I think that somebody perceives that women may not have the perseverance to stick it out
Mhm.
through then I just need to kind of have my through my pitch kind of or through my journey kind of make it very clear that I'm that person, right? Women
Mhm.
or man, right? So it's really I think regardless of gender, height, or whatever, it's
Mhm.
really about self-awareness,
Mhm.
as opposed to anything else. Uh, is the number of women founders or the funding that goes behind women uh, purely a function of biases? I would say yes, a large proportion of it, but some proportion of it is also a function of how many women are out there wanting to do something,
Mhm.
to be founders, right? So it's a mix of both.
Right.
I wouldn't say biases are zero. They are way better than I'm a product of 80s, so they're way better for people born in 90s than it was for my generation. So things are changing, and
Right.
they're changing rapidly. But I think regardless of any generation or gender or anything else, it's self-awareness is kind of key, and having a game plan around it is sort of the key thing here.
Yeah. So self-awareness. I'm sorry. I'm digging because this is very important for me as well. I mean, my wife also wants to be a founder. I just want to know what the perception is. There are two founders, similar ideas, similar merit, similar experience, and if the investor has to bet on one of the founders, okay, does a perception play a role here on who is able to manage their investment better? Is there a perception somewhat? I mean, you can be politically right, but still let us know what the perception is overall today, that just by the power of the idea, there is absolutely no biases when they are backing a certain founder based on gender.
So it's never the idea that gets funded, right? It's a whole package. And an important part of the package is basically perception and your likability or your belief in that person, right? At such an early stage where I don't have a product, I don't have customers, I don't have a team, I don't have anything, somebody has to really believe that one, and I'm saying I'll build something which nobody else has built sitting in India, and I'll sell it to large companies in US, right?
Mm,
Somebody basically, yeah, he has, the idea has to make sense. I should not sound completely insane, but essentially 90% of that is belief in the fact that I will be able to, one, build it, and I will be able to sell it.
mm,
And three, I'll be able to hire the team that can do both of these, right? So it's always perception. That belief is always perception, right?
mm,
Now, whether a particular investor will only gain confidence in a male versus a female,
mm,
that again depends a lot on their background. I don't
mm.
think all investors are like that.
Got it. Okay. Mm,
Some maybe, and with those investors also, it's not necessary. It's just men, right? There could
mm.
be women also who are more biased and have more confidence in men, right? It goes both ways.
Mm,
So belief is always a perception.
right.
So it eventually boils down to who are the investors. It's no more a society where you can say 100% of investors are going to go with one right answer, right?
Mm,
And that right answer is a particular gender. I don't think we are in that place in those dark ages anymore.
mm,
Uh, for sure, we've had like fantastic entrepreneurs like Faguni kind of show really what it means to build a solid company and take it public. So we
mm,
have great examples, not just in India, anywhere else in the world. So we have solid examples both on the founders side as well as investors side,
mm.
right? So I don't think we are in those dark ages anymore. It kind of eventually boils down to person, but person to person is also not just gender; it's a lot of other factors as well.
Right. Um, j- just doubling down on not on the woman entrepreneur, not on the investment side. What does it take? Because building a startup is hard, right? It's so taxing. It takes everything away, and there are women, especially in their 40s, or when they're married, they have kids, their families. And I still remember a very nice, insightful interview by Indra Nui when she said, "Women cannot have it all." Okay, and their biological clock and their career clock are in complete contrast with with
Yeah.
itself. Okay, there are the demands from the family is also increasing. And I was talking to Priyanka just day before yesterday, because I have a founder, male founder, and he is a father of 2-year old, and I do not have a kid, so I can go all in, but I get sometimes annoyed how much of his capacity is pulled to his family's needs. For a woman, it becomes the problem just multiplies, right? And I know, Anu, Priyanka told me that you do not have a kid, but I'm sure you interact with other women founders. So tell me, what does it take for a woman founder to actually build startups, especially the gender roles in traditional Indian families? Okay, are there's more demand from them. So can you break this down on the pressures of woman founder to build successful startups along with their other household responsibilities?
I think you basically have to be a superwoman. I don't know how those women do it. I think it's always a combination of a superwoman and a superman of a husband kind of coming together because they're definitely one. Regardless of traditionally what's viewed as gender roles, you cannot do it alone. We often underestimate the power of a good partner. Uh,
Mm,
on the other side and give too much credit to women. I think if you're a women founder, your male partner who may or may not be a co-founder with you is also deserves a lot of merit,
mm,
right? Because he's kind of supporting you, and oftentimes probably going against a lot of traditional societal values and doing that, right? So it's always a combination of two that kind of happens. But how they do it, I think with a lot of support from the family, and women are generally, I feel, better multitaskers.
mm,
you would agree with me. We kind of can do a lot of things together and manage a lot of things together. So as long as you are smart enough to build an ecosystem of that support with you,
Mm.
I think you can manage. But having said that, I don't have kids, so I'm not the best person to answer this question. I think those women are super women. I can't imagine how they do that with
Yeah.
kids.
So women, you are tagging them as superwoman, but when it comes to men who are running startups, they are not expected. They do not build successful companies with the guilt of not being able to balance it out with their household responsibilities. But for a woman, it comes with a certain amount of guilt if they are not being able to give time to their kids or to the family and the rest of the family. So it
I
always.
I don't think that's a fair statement. I can tell you a lot of my male founder friends who don't get a lot of time with their kids, and they feel equally bad about it. Right? They travel like crazy and they feel equally bad about it. So I don't think, generally, yes, women may be expected to take a lot more of day-to-day accountability, but that's where I'm seeing that if you have both partners have to kind of work in tandem, and you need to have a solid ecosystem around it.
Hmm.
But having said that, I think women, we as creatures, we have that imposter syndrome kind of built in so badly. We feel guilty about everything, right?
Hmm.
So it's not just kids. If I'm not spending enough time with my parents or with my husband, I may feel guilty about it. I doubt my husband will feel guilty about that, right? So that's, I think, biological. And but yeah, I really don't know how these women with kids do it. I'm definitely not one of those superwomen. I find it difficult to manage even with my dog. So
Cool. Just last two questions here. On do you have a co-founder with Acacia, or how does it?
yeah, so we have a founding team. We have Piyush, who's our CTO.
Hmm.
Sumit joined us as a sustainability or climate lead, and we have Jagmohan, who's looking at our sales.
Got it.
So we have a founding team of co-founders with me. Yeah.
Got it. So help me run through your process of building a founding team. Like what goes into building a founding team, and what's your process like?
So first time, again, very different first and second time. I
Hmm.
think first time it was more of Priyanka and me coming together saying that, okay, we'll do something together. And we just started off, right? So
Hmm.
a lot of naivety. Second time, I think it was more deliberate and thought through. So I kind of started working on the idea, and Jamon had started working with me very early on. He was a hustler. He had worked with me very closely at Oxford Cap. So he had been working with me very early on. And then I kind of looked at what are these missing pieces that I need to fill in, technology and climate kind of being the key ones.
Hmm.
And I set out to kind of really look for people with those experiences and skill sets.
Hmm.
But having said that, still a very founder led kind of mindset, right? And that's how the team was constructed as opposed to coming together.
Yeah. So experience and skill set, I understand. Okay. So that is key. However, how do you gauge for the right mindset to have in a startup? Like, what are the other traits that you look for while building your first leadership team or co-founding team?
So in my case, I knew both of them, Piyush and Sumit, from a while, for
Got
a
it.
long, long time.
Hmm.
At least one of them had been a founder before, so
Hmm.
that's helpful.
Right.
So if you have had some entrepreneurial experience in the past, nothing can sort of beat that,
With that, yeah.
right? Then it's generally more about how aligned is the person with your vision, how agile is he or she in their thought process.
Hmm.
Are they scared of failing, right?
Hmm.
So are they looking at it as another job where they'll also get some equity, or are they really, do they really have the perseverance to kind of stick it out when things get tough?
Hmm.
um, are they scared of failing? I think fear of failure is probably one of the biggest things that you need to weed out, because
Hmm.
you have to kind of break a lot of things to make them again, and that's an iterative process.
Got it.
So it comes with just interacting and kind of talking through a lot of it, as such, and getting to know the other person.
Got it. And how important it is? You said that most of your team are the ones that you had worked with them, right? So does it always help to have your closest team have had a past working relationship for long? Like, does it accelerate the chances of succeeding together as a team?
That would be ideal, because you know what their strengths and weaknesses are. You know
Mm,
exactly what to expect out of them.
right.
But having said that, I would say that's not necessary,
Mm,
because how somebody's performance was in a very corporate setup doesn't necessarily translate to how they'll perform as a founder or a co-founder, right? Because
mm,
the roles and the context is very, very, very different.
right.
So it's not necessary. I think if you're going with somebody whom you've just met, you probably just need to kind of be a little more meticulous about structuring interactions so you can get to the real answers on some of these aspects and knowing
Mm,
the person.
right.
But yeah, having worked together definitely sort of helps for sure.
Like for example, when you worked with Priyanka, okay, in your first company, so you might have been best friends, but when it comes to work, it's a different game altogether, isn't it?
Yes, Priyanka and I had never worked together actually.
Who?
Priyanka and I had never worked together
Exactly.
actually.
So you might be best of friends, but now it's a completely different game because now you have to pull your weight, right? I'm just asking, as a founder dynamic, co-founder dynamic, you might be having equal equity and stuff like that. How does it work, wherein one person is not pulling in as much weight as you are? Okay, it's like any partnership. Like my wife always complains that she is filling the marriage bucket more than me sometimes. Like it's not never equal, right? So does it how do you manage the dynamic wherein that maybe you are putting in more effort and you are driven more, or you are pulling through more than the other one is not? This is just a random question that came to my mind, but I hope you understand this question, right? So
Yeah.
how do you ensure that there is equal drive and motivation, which two people could be completely different individuals, right? So the drive will never be the same, the passion might not be the same, the hustle might not be the same. How do you negotiate that dynamic?
Um, So I think, see, drive and hustle are non-negotiables. That
Mm,
has to be there if you're equal partners, right?
mm,
Otherwise, you can't move forward, right? So,
mm,
what can be different is that um, your motivations behind those and how that drive translates into work, right? The input and the output can be different,
mm.
but the measurement of the drive itself, that has to be there, right? So I don't think you can negotiate on the level of drive and hustle, because that's required from everybody who's there on the founding team. Um, but having said that, I agree it's never equal, but I also don't think, I mean, I've been married for almost 15 years, and I can tell you confidently that any relationship that is lasting is never equal, but it's also never not equal from one side only. There's times when I may be pulling more of the weight of the relationship, and there are times when the other person may be pulling more of the weight. So as long as there's that mutual understanding that what you're doing is building together, and eventually the company matters more than you guys individually,
Right.
and you're both kind of working towards it, I think there'll be times when each of you will be presented the opportunity to kind of pull your weight. But some people may be good at something else, some may be good at something else.
Yeah.
So like, I'll give you, between Priyanka and I, we had our roles so clearly divided out that we never, initially even had to speak about it, because we were personality wise so different. It was very clear what she's going to do and what I'm going to do, right? It was that clear. And with uh, with what I was doing, I'm very driven with what she's doing. She's very driven, and there are times when this part of the business is more important, whereas there are times when this part of the business is more important, or there are times
mm,
when I think a partnership can only sustain when both of you pull your weight. May not be all the time,
mm,
but you always have an opportunity to kind of shine.
mm.
Specifically, if you're just two of you.
Right, like for example, you are put in 16, 17 hours a day. You know the other one is not, or maybe somebody is taking vacation and you are irritated. How can you afford taking a vacation? We have to, so this month or the next month is easy. So these things, do you always measure yourself in terms of, okay, how much, especially equal partners, that okay, is the other partner doing enough as me?
So if you're equal partners, honestly, I what you are talking about is more of commitment.
Mm,
I may be on a pre-planned vacation, but as long as I'm delivering and
mm,
taking care of stuff that I'm supposed to take care of, I
right,
should be okay. But if that stuff is, kind of becoming a problem for the company, then it's
mm,
not okay,
got
right?
it.
So it would be hard to work with somebody, at least for me, who's not as committed,
Mm,
uh, right? But yeah,
got it.
that I would be a problem.
Cool. My last question here, Anu, what do you think? So, while building multiple companies like 2x founder, you unravel a lot of your own personality and strength. Okay, what do you think? What do you think are your strengths that you unlocked or you identified, that you know what, this is this side of persona of mine, I did not know, and good that I could identify it. So what do you think are your strengths that you have discovered?
Um, I think my core strength, I would say, is being able to connect the dots.
Mm,
And that has always been the case, not just here, even before, throughout my career. I can really kind of take up very different complicated pieces and connect the dots, and sort of even sort of look further down the road, 5-10 years, and see develop strong thesis
mm.
around it. So I think that's my core strength, or I would say magic wand that I would kind of attribute um, my success to.
Got it. And what do you do to invest in your own growth? Like, do you spend time with other founders, or do you pour into books? Are you what how do you improve yourselves?
I think all of the above. So, talking to founders is perhaps the best way to learn if you're building
Mm,
something.
mm,
Especially people who are way ahead of you, or even your peers.
mm,
Both ways, it's a very different learning, because there are 100,000 ways of doing the same thing. So
mm.
it kind of really broadens your horizons. So definitely meeting founders, learning about new businesses, new ways of doing things, and different perceptions.
Got
Uh, and yeah, reading kind of gives you a very different dimension. So even talking to your team, right? People on
it. Mm.
ground and stuff. So there are many different ways to learn. And as a founder, you have to kind of invest in all of them.
Got it. And what do you think about mentorship? Like, do you have personal mentors, coaches in the industry who you go to seek help and stuff like that, or is it? What do you think of it, or is it overrated and stuff like that? What are your
Um,
thoughts about it?
so honestly, up until now, I haven't come across um, a mentor relationship, a formal mentor relationship, which I would say is, kind of really valuable.
Mm,
Um, but I've heard of a lot of people who kind of do that. I haven't come across something like that.
got
But yes, having said that, there are a lot of other there are a lot of sort of informal mentor relationships, people
right,
that I go to for advice and counsel on
right,
different aspects.
got it,
So that's always there. But yeah, I don't have that one person I would say that, okay, he or she will be the first person I'll call.
got it. Excellent. Well, this brings us to the end of a very, very fascinating conversation with Anu. Anu, thank you for your time and giving us your wealth of knowledge from your experience. And I could not thank you enough for your time today.
Thank you so much, Ravi. It was a pleasure having you, being here and talking to you. And I hope you grow the podcast even more.
Thank you so much, Anu. See you around.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
See you. Bye.